Hi.
Hi, Caitlin. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to see you again.
You too. Well, this is why I'm so excited to have you on the show, actually, because for those that don't already know, Caitlin is an incredible dating coach. And she was actually the coach that I went to see a few years ago when I wanted to work on my own dating life. And so I know firsthand the profound wisdom that this woman has. I'm really looking forward to you sharing some of your knowledge with the listeners today.
Thank you. That's so kind to say. And I apologise in advance if you can hear a baby crying, a dog barking. I am still on sort of half on maternity leave, so
Right. Well,
things
thank
are a
you
little
for
bit
jumping
crazy
on
around
this
here.
when you're juggling so many different things. I really
No,
appreciate
I really wanted to be here, so I'm thrilled to be talking about something that's not baby sleep.
it. So, yeah, for those that don't already know you, if you'd want to share a little bit about you and what you do.
Mm, definitely. So, as you very kindly said, I'm a dating, and it sounds a bit weird to say, but love coach, where I work with usually women, I have to say, who feel like something might be blocking them when it comes to romance, whether it's the actual practicalities of dating, whether they attract kind of emotionally unavailable people again and again, whether actually their self esteem is at rock bottom and they don't feel like they're ever going to meet anybody or be good enough to meet somebody. So it's quite nuanced in terms of what we work on, but we really look at life as this sort of 360 picture and we work on, okay, where do we want to get to? Is that being happy being single, or is that they want to be in a relationship with somebody? And we slowly but surely give things a good kick in the right direction. And, by the end of it, hopefully ensure that they're much happier, potentially have a healthier attitude or or knowledge of who they're going to be dating, and just the real confidence actually that life works out for
Yes,
people. So
beautiful.
yeah, I've been doing it for years now and I absolutely love it because as when you're talking about dating, it's 20% of the actual dating and strategy, isn't it? And 80% of everything that's underneath.
Yes. Well, yeah, I'd love to dive into that actually because you addressed what probably a lot of people come to you about that, they keep attracting the same sort of person and they don't really understand why. So perhaps you could explain why is it that people will tend to repeat similar kind of more destructive relationship patterns?
Mm. God, that is the million dollar question, isn't it? But I'd say, there are a lot of reasons, and we love to be able to just pinpoint one, but sometimes it's a little bit of a boiling pot. Sometimes it can be because of childhood, familial patterns, we're kind of repeating what we see, or, some psychologists argue that we use romantic relationships in order to fix childhood trauma, things like that. Other people would argue actually, if you're looking at a modality such as CBT, that, as humans, we are hardwired to go for what's familiar.
Mhm.
And in terms of if we have experienced something over and over again, we will automatically train ourselves to repeat those patterns. So our thoughts will be the same, which will produce the feelings, the emotions, the behaviors. And it's kind of like walking around with goggles on, where if those thoughts are constantly like, I'm not good enough for this relationship, or there aren't any good guys left, or there aren't any good people left, then that's what we will end up kind of seeing more of and seeking just because of the way our brain is designed to work. Um, so there can be kind of lots of nuance within that, but I would say we are hardwired to go for what is familiar and what feels good, well, or feels terrible
Yeah.
actually by the end of it. But there's a really horrible phrase, and I can't remember who said it to me once, but it's like shit stinks, but it's warm. So even if something's bad, We
Never
can
heard that one
keep
before,
going
actually.
back to, yeah, it's very unpleasant. I don't know why it popped to mind, but so lots of reasons as well, like social conditioning. We've got an idea of who we should be with, or who our friends will think is attractive, or we've got grown up watching Disney, rom-coms, all of that, like attachment styles. There's so much that goes into kind of why we're attracted to who we are. But yeah, most people, if you put in a room, um, they of 100 people, they'd be naturally drawn to three of them.
Interesting.
Why? Yeah, or a few of them.
Yeah, and discussing that, you just addressed social conditioning with these things, and I think that's a really interesting concept when it comes to relationships and dating, because and I'd love to dive into this with you because of the fact that your Instagram handle as well is the Compatibility Coach. And I think
Yes.
that is a really interesting point when it comes down to social conditioning, because I think often people will sort of forego compatibility because of chemistry. And
Hmm.
I think we are very conditioned in society to go for kind of the chemistry, the butterflies, those sorts of things over what actually makes people compatible together. And so what would you describe as the kind of the biggest misconceptions of compatibility?
Definitely. Well, I kind of chose the handle, the compatibility coach, because, and I think we're going to get into this later, but first of all, I really truly believe you've got to figure out you. You've almost got to get compatible with yourself to even have a inkling or hope in hell of figuring out who is going to be right for you down the line. And with clients, if they want that long-term relationship, we're not looking at who's going to be great for the next few months. We're looking at who you're still going to want to be with in 50 years. So if you can't be putting up with the stuff that's going on now, how are you going to do that for 20, 30, 40, 50 years? You
Yeah.
know? So it's got to kind of start with that. But some sort of common misconceptions, I'd say, is, you are right. We are kind of trained to prioritize like the looks, the chemistry, the height, what our friends are going to think, who they are in the world. And be drawn to those sort of more not superficial, because of course they're really important, but the shiny aspects about somebody. And actually what we need to be looking at is, how safe do we feel around somebody? Can we be ourselves? Can we laugh? Do our values align? Do we want the same things for our future? Because you can be really compatible with somebody in loads of different ways and have great chemistry, but if there's something fundamental, like one of you wants kids, one of you doesn't, one of you wants to travel the world, one of you wants to stay at home, and neither of you are going to be prepared to compromise, or you'd be really miserable compromising, then something like that is pretty fundamental. So,
Yeah.
that phrase, like love conquers all. Well, no, not really. You have to have the building blocks there too.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I actually remember when we were doing the coaching together, I remember us talking about, because I think I did used to really suffer from anxious attachment. And I think since the coaching that I've done with you and, then doing my own inner work based on some of those teachings, I definitely feel much more securely attached. But the first step for that for me actually was when you said something along the lines of, when you feel, butterflies for somebody, that isn't necessarily even you actually being attracted to that person, but that your nervous system has been conditioned in such a way that you associate your nervous system essentially being activated with attraction, rather than necessarily you actually being attracted to them, if that makes sense. And I
Yeah.
remember I was dating somebody at the time who he was very much the bad boy type guy. And I actually ended things with him after that realization from you, because I realized, am I actually attracted to this person, or am I actually attracted to the way that he activates my nervous system, which is an unhealthy association that I've had to love. And so I guess that kind of ties into the whole compatibility and chemistry thing of, if someone activates your nervous system, we're very conditioned to associate that with love, when actually that isn't necessarily the case at all.
No, 100%. Like if you've been used to dating, people who aren't available, or you've been on that anxious avoidant roller coaster, where there are really big highs and really low lows, that's what we get used to. And it can actually feel really boring to sit across somebody and be like, okay, yeah, they seem to be keen, they're funny, they're attractive. Yeah, we seem to want the same things. Okay, there's something missing. If we've been conditioned to be on that roller coaster, it
Yeah.
is that adrenaline fueled response that often is missing. It's the butterflies, the sparks, the anxiety that comes with that, because it can be very addictive, and it can be, you know, those high highs feel so much better because there are the crashing lows. So it's a funny one to kind of almost wean yourself off, isn't it? Chasing that high and those sparks. And look,
Yes.
chemistry is really important. Chemistry and attraction are hugely important when it comes to relationship, because otherwise you're roommates, right? But we've got to understand, as you did, what is chemistry and attraction, and what is perhaps slightly unhealthier patterns that we've been repeating.
Exactly. And I think also, with my most recent partner, I at the beginning there wasn't necessarily those crazy butterflies, and it actually felt very steady and peaceful. And so I want to just reassure women as well who are listening to this, who maybe think that they need to have those crazy butterflies in order to be attracted to somebody. I actually feel like most of the people that I know, when they first met their person who they're now wildly attracted to, they didn't necessarily have that straight from the start. And so kind of going against your natural instincts sometimes can actually be much more rewarding in the long term.
Oh, definitely. And I think that's why I always say, like, we're going into dates, right, expecting to know instantly and meet the love of our life and have this crazy chemical reaction. And I think that happens for something like 10% of people. But, the vast majority of the time, it is that slow burn. It's steady and it grows. So as long as there is like a little bit of attraction when you meet somebody, go on those 3 dates, give it more time, look for what is attractive, look for what you do want, and you will often be very, very surprised. The more you get to know somebody, the more attractive they become, or the less attractive they become. It's about putting in that time, which nobody wants to do when they're dating. Everybody wants to save time and get
Well, especially
instant results.
nowadays, because of the way our society is wired, that we need instant gratification for everything, We've got Amazon where we can get next day delivery for literally anything that we want. Uber Eats, you can have your meal prepared and ready at your door in like 10 minutes sometimes. So I think we've become very conditioned to think that everything in life, and not just that it should be like that, but that it's almost like our prerogative to be able to, have that straight away. And actually, I truly do believe that the best things in life are often the things that are a bit more of a slow burn, and that they develop a bit more over time. And that's a really fun stage as well of dating and relationships. And so, yeah, I say to my clients as well, allow the space for that beautiful part of the honeymoon phase, because if you rush that, you don't necessarily, there's other beauty that develops within a relationship, but that honeymoon stage is not something that you can necessarily get again. And so just really relish and enjoy that period of a relationship.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think a lot of the time people don't enjoy the dating process. They don't enjoy the
Yeah.
that initial bit. They want the certainty that it's going to go somewhere or it's going to develop. So we end up rushing things, as you've said, and then we, can miss red flags, or we will kind of discard somebody actually where there was a lot of potential because it wasn't moving quick enough, or you weren't feeling how you thought you'd feel, or
Yeah,
you weren't feeling how you felt with your ex, things like that.
yes, exactly. Yeah, and we addressed earlier a little bit about anxious attachment. And I wonder, in terms of compatibility, is it possible for two people who are different attachment styles to become compatible, so to become securely attached? Is that possible for them to grow within the relationship closer together in that sense?
Definitely. Like, I don't see, why not? I think it's a case of if both of you are prepared to put in the work and um, get really clear on, the kind of different attachment styles and the communication around it, and honoring each other's needs, and the respect and the need for when somebody needs space versus when somebody needs reassurance, and coming together on that. Yes, definitely. Because, I know the stat is like 50% of the population are secure. We all have different tendencies. We all
Yes.
have, kind of, some of us have more anxious tendencies. We might lean towards that, even if we feel secure 80% of the time. Some of us might have avoidant tendencies, even though we're secure 80% of the time. So, yeah, I think two people can absolutely come together if you are kind of prepared to meet in the middle of it. And I think anxious and attachment, we get really um, caught up in trying to figure out what people are and where they sit and stuff like that. But ultimately, they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
People who are anxious and people who are avoidant both have the same need for love and security, and they both want the same thing. We just have very different coping mechanisms around it.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a really beautiful point because when I used to suffer from anxious attachment, I definitely thought that people with anxious attachment were the victims in the situation, and people avoidant, they were these people who were, they were the ones doing it to us. But in actual fact, it's both sides are just based on what they've learned in their childhood or things like that. That's their coping strategy, but both want the same thing of, yeah, love, emotional safety, but they both have their different strategies of getting to that place.
Definitely. And I think as well, there's a reason why they tend to be attracted to each other too. Of course, on one hand, sometimes they can really confirm the worst feelings and thoughts they have about themselves and relationships and things like that. But actually, you know, one thing that somebody who has more avoidant tendencies has is kind of independence, and can seem or feel super strong and secure, and like they've got it all together, whereas the somebody who has more anxious tendencies actually might seem very open and in tune with their emotions, and quite freeing in that way. And there are very attractive qualities about each, that
Yeah.
sometimes I think the other person's attracted to. So as long as we can work on that and harness that and use the other person to learn from, then I think it
Yes.
can be a great partnership. But the key is you cannot force somebody to change. So
Yes.
a lot of the time, a dynamic can be somebody with more anxious tendencies trying to force somebody with more avoidant tendencies to change, because usually the anxious person is a little bit more willing to do the work versus the avoidant person. And that just doesn't work. Both parties have to be willing and open.
Yes, totally agree. And so, to what extent do you feel like people need to do the inner work themselves before getting into a partnership?
I mean, I'm always a huge advocate for it, because I think you go into that partnership knowing yourself, liking yourself, knowing what you want, being able, hopefully, to communicate boundaries, to speak up a little bit more, to kind of have that trust and that confidence that,
Yeah.
you're worth this relationship, and you're willing to build a relationship. So sometimes I
Yeah.
think if you've got a level of self-awareness and have done the work beforehand, you've also got that understanding that a great relationship is built. It doesn't just happen. So you can not safeguard relationships, but you can have the understanding to put in that work sometimes within the relationship itself. But so yeah, that's what I absolutely love doing. And as I said, I work with clients who usually pre-relationship, so that's where kind of a lot of the time is spent. But I also don't agree with the statement that you have to feel completely healed before getting into some relationship, because that's also bullshit. You know, all all
Impossible
that
either.
happens,
Never
yeah,
ever fully
no,
healed.
and it's all that happens is you get into the relationship, and then it's new level, new devil, right? More things come up. You have
Yes.
to go deeper on certain things. It just shines a light on actually where you've still got maybe some learning or some kind of loving to do. And also same thing with motherhood, right? Same thing with kind of every stage. Having my daughter Darcy has now taught me so much more, not just to do with my relationship, but about myself, where insecurities still are with me, what work I've still got to do, especially around, how do I want her to feel about herself? Okay, God, like, how do I feel about me? Like, what do I still want to be working on and be doing for her? So every stage of life, there will come an aspect that we can use to, I mean, this sounds exhausting, right? Like, it's not having to be like stuck in this horrible dark pit for the rest of your life, but it's just accepting that with every like beautiful thing, then um, there comes sometimes some new learnings, which can be amazing.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, maybe I'm just wired a bit weirdly with this kind of stuff, but I really truly believe that that is the most beautiful part of life, actually, is how we can evolve through it and grow and become better versions of ourselves. And so anytime that, issues come up or any kind of adversity or challenging periods in your life, and unknowns as well, so they can be beautiful unknowns like having a child, but that's a huge thing to navigate when yes, you can read the books about it and things like that, and the same with love. It's yes, you can educate yourself on it, and I think that's really important to do. And I know I might sound biased with that, but I don't think we're educated enough around what love truly is, what it means to be in a healthy partnership, all of these kind of stuff. So I do think it is amazing to do that, but also lived experience is the best way to truly grow. But you have to put yourself out of your comfort zone, do things that's a little bit different. And I think the thing about being single is that it's almost like once you feel in a really great place in terms of self-love and stuff like that, then sometimes people just think, okay, I've completed it now, I'm good. But then you get into a relationship and you see all these other things being triggered. And for me, that's actually the beauty of relationship, is the growth that comes out of it. And so yeah, I think that you can have that little reframe with these things and recognize that it's for like a beautiful divine reason as well.
Yeah, and we're constantly evolving. Like, it's so ridiculous to think, oh, you're going to be the same person at 30 that you were at 20, at 40, 50. We're constantly changing and we're constantly growing. I also think sometimes
Yes.
doing the work and the self-help element can be a bit of a rod to beat yourself over the head with for all my perfectionists out there. So it's also having a bit of grace with it and allowing yourself some space to do this work and not have to be perfect at it and things like that.
Yes, totally agree. So we addressed some things about compatibility, and I'd love to ask, is there any questions that you recommend to anybody who maybe is on a date or just starting dating somebody? How do you kind of work out things like compatibility when you first start dating somebody?
Oh, it's such a good question, that, isn't it? I would say um, when you first start dating, unfortunately, it's asking the big questions. That I talked about, the kind of deal breakers, such as well, I mean, first of all, what are they looking for? Are they dating to be in a relationship, or are they dating to have fun? We start there, because if they're dating to have fun and you're dating because you actually want to meet somebody, what's the point? And then, having the kind of gentler conversations around things like children, if you want them in the future, where do you kind of see yourself living? Or, do you see yourself traveling the world, staying at home? Things like that, to get a sense of actually if your visions of the future align, I think is really important. So
Yeah.
that's number one. I then also, other things such as compatibility, such as like, intellectual compatibility, sexual compatibility, humor, all of those things will naturally start to come out. But it will be, again, the time that you spend with somebody. You will soon
Yeah.
start to kind of realize whether you are compatible, and you're not ever going to hit on every single thing. Like hobbies, do I have the same hobbies as my husband? Absolutely not. Do I find his tedious and boring? Yes, I do. I don't want to spend half my life at a golf course. That's fine. Okay. And someone's like, oh, but they don't like reading the same books as me. So, like, does it like, you
Yeah.
can start to really nitpick. So you've got to actually, again, figure out what are the key things that are important to you, and find somebody with enough compatibility in those areas. Like, I know that I have to be somebody where I can laugh. So, having a sense of humor where we get each other is really important. I knew that the kids thing was important to me. Having somebody with family values where there was compatibility there was really important. Um, I knew that kind of ambition and drive was really important to me. So again, having somebody there with the compatibility was really important. And then,
Yes.
the kind of the chemistry and things like that, of course, fit in. So each person will be very, very different, but as long as you're kind of aligned on the deal breakers at the beginning, and asking those big questions, which can feel quite scary and can feel like, oh, it's too much, I can't do this, it's the first date, everybody needs to chill out. And if you have that connection and you can see things coming out as the dates go on, then I think you'll pretty quickly figure it out.
Yes. And I think just,
There are
yeah, as
also
you said, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, there's also some great questions you can ask at the end of the date about yourself, which will really help with this. So it's not to do with compatibility, but it's actually doing a little bit of a stock take on how you feel after each date. And it is things like, how did I feel in my body? Was I energized? Did I feel drained? Did I laugh? What did I learn? Um, and taking a bit of a pause to think about you after, because it puts the emphasis back on you. We continue learning, and the whole focus isn't just on like, oh my God, did they like me? How did I come across? So we start to tune into our body and our feelings a lot more, which can again help us figure out whether that person could be right for us.
Yes. Yeah, and I love what you say about kind of just asking those questions, because that might sound so simple, but I think so many women are conditioned to kind of be this whole concept of the cool girl, and to, not come across too much, or whatever the narratives are. And actually that's the only way for you to actually work out if you are compatible with someone, is to to ask those genuine questions and be authentic to yourself as well, because if you're trying to be the cool girl and trying to perform as a certain person, then even if that person does become attracted to you, they're attracted to what you are not. So that relationship is never going to last anyway. So you might as well kind of have the more difficult, braver conversations sooner rather than later, so that you can just save both of you time, rather than pretending to be something, or pretending that you don't have the needs that you do, or the non-negotiables that you do.
Definitely. And I think it's, people can kind of keep up an appearance, right, for a couple of months, and then after that, it sort of falls off a cliff. Um, so,
Yes.
you're
Yeah.
either going to get yourself into a situation where, if you don't ever speak up, or you don't ask what you want or voice an opinion, or you go with the flow all the time, after a couple of months, you're a bit like, actually, no, God, that's not working for me anymore. And as soon as you then start actually being yourself and speaking up, the other person's like, hang on a minute, this isn't who I've been dating.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, totally. So is there any things that are actually red flags, but that people might misinterpret for being, attractive qualities, or even potentially compatibility, but that they're actually red flags?
Oh, I
Is there
mean,
anything that
when
you
I,
think people
yeah,
prioritize too much um, over what's actually important, basically?
so, when we're talking about red flags, obviously there are like the very key ones, such as, I don't know, I think Andrew Tate's a great person, or, you know, is really rude to waiters, like the glaringly obvious ones, which I think most people would be like, oh, no, I think I'm good. I'm gonna walk away from that aspect.
Yeah.
But I get what you mean, that there's a kind of grey area sometimes, isn't there, that people can let certain behaviour go, or there are things we kind of naturally have a niggle about and we're not quite sure. But those niggles, such as, well, I suppose a good, sorry, I'm really rambling on this one. So I suppose an interesting one could be to look at somebody appearing super self-assured, independent, and, knows what they want, very direct, strong, all that sort of stuff, very kind of going for you and being super keen. Again, that's great on the surface, and if that continues for the length of the relationship, amazing. But sometimes, when we can get bowed away, or bowled away, that is the baby brain speaking, um, with that, not love bombing, but just that kind of intensity. I think sometimes we can, our common sense can sometimes go out the window. So that could be an
Mhm.
example. But otherwise, I would say prioritizing things like the height, the looks, the status, what our
Mm.
friends are going to think,
Mhm.
um, can, who cares if your friends find them attractive or not? I'm sorry, like, they're not going to be the one
Yeah.
sleeping with them or living with them for 40 years. So
So true.
yeah, the slightly more surface level aspects we get very caught up in, and we tend to prioritize over actual compatibility. It's a very long-winded way of answering the question.
No, 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 it was great. Thank you. Um, so I'd also love to ask about mindset stuff, because I know
Yeah.
you do a lot of work around this. And so, um, for instance, say somebody has the kind of limiting belief that there are no good men out there, as we kind of addressed a little bit earlier. Um, how do you help your clients to kind of reframe that for themselves?
So if there, I mean, I think that is the one of the most common beliefs actually that I see, is that, either love won't happen, or there are no good guys out there, or they are too, I don't know, much, or opinionated, or independent, or anxious, or whatever it might be. And I like to start to reframe that by looking for evidence that maybe that belief isn't quite true. So, if we take the one, for example, of all the good guys are gone, a really simple reframing we can do each day is to actually look for an example of a good guy. And, it seems super trite, but you do that for 3 months, that's 90 examples of how there are good men out there. That's going to go so far in reframing that belief and actually challenging it. And also, it makes you happier. It doesn't have to be somebody asks you out every day, but it could be, somebody held the door, offered to carry a suitcase up the stairs, or your friend told you this really nice thing that their partner did, or actually when you were dating somebody in the past, you remembered a time where they did something lovely, or you've got an amazing brother or dad, or whatever it is. Sometimes we kind of need to drown in new evidence and focus on exactly what we do want and surround ourselves with examples of this, rather than focusing on the one person who's not a good guy, or that when you go on the date and it didn't work out. We're very quick to chalk those examples up of evidence to support that belief. So turning it on its head, I think, is really important. We don't do enough of.
Yes. Well, I guess in life we're very conditioned, even from an evolutionary standpoint, to kind of focus on the dangers, focus on the negatives. And but as you said, when you do that, it's understandable that our primal brain wants to do that. But when you do that and don't kind of actively rewire your brain to work against that, then it's like the whole concept of confirmation bias. You will keep attracting into your life those negative things because that's all that you're focused on. So as you said, it's not just even for dating, but also just for life in general. You will live a much happier life when you start to rewire your brain in that way.
Definitely. Like, an example I love to use is, the thoughts we have every day in the unconscious bias has so much of an impact in ways we don't even, recognize. Like, let's say if me and you were walking down the street together, and because my background was feeling not good enough, or feeling like there are no good guys left, or I was sort of scouting for that danger, and let's say he was walking towards us and rolled his eyes. Okay, well, there were a billion reasons why he could have rolled his eyes. You might not have even noticed, or you'd have seen it and thought, God, he's on the phone, he looks stressed, somebody's obviously annoyed him. I might see that and interpret that as he rolled his eyes because I look stupid or fat, or he's heard me say something, that's stupid. And that might feel really, really true to me. But what does that mean? That means for the rest of the day, I'm going around thinking that my shoulders are hunched. I'm looking for other signs that people think what I'm wearing is crap, or that, I'm not attractive, or I'm an idiot, or whatever it is. I miss the person who might hold the door walking into their coffee shop. I miss the opportunity to chat to a bartender, as they pour a drink. I miss the person smiling across the room. Instead, I focus on the girl who looks me up and down. And I again interpret that as more evidence that, I'm not an attractive person. My whole energy is different. It's all I can focus on. So, I don't want to go to the gym because I feel crap, or I have that third glass of wine, which is going to make me feel worse in the morning, and then I get the anxiety. All these little things have a big impact on us. So it's really important, as you said, to do that mindset work, to catch those thoughts, to kind of actually recognize when they're coming up and learn to challenge them a little bit.
Yes, yeah. And then even, once you're in the dating scene as well, for instance, ghosting is can be an example for this, of how at the time we can interpret it of all the negative things that it means about us, but actually something like ghosting really says a lot more about that person than it does about ourselves. And so it's just a choice of how we decide to view these situations. Do we personalize it as that we're these awful people because this happened, or do we look at it and think, gosh, thank God I worked out now that that's the type of character that this person has, because you wouldn't want to be with somebody who had the type of character that would be willing to ghost somebody.
Absolutely. 1,000%. And oh God, especially with ghosting, don't even get me started on it. But yeah, there's always going to be, when it comes to dating, there's so much uncertainty, a natural amount of uncertainty, because you're, two people sat opposite each other, maybe trying to figure out if you'd like to go on another
Yeah.
date or potentially spend the rest of your life together. Like, that you can't control the other person. And that's where the uncertainty and the anxiety and everything else comes in. But there's always going to be, you know, the shit end of the stick, great end of the stick. There's always going to be doubts, insecurities, anxieties, negative self-talk, things that could go wrong, reasons why it's not going to work out. That's always going to be there. But on the flip side, as you said, there's always going to be an alternative, which is, what if it does work out? What if you could learn something from that date? What if um, things do fall into place? What if you are a great person? So it is sometimes a little bit of a choice of, where do I want to focus my energy? Where do I want to
Yeah.
be? And not discounting how you feel, because as dating can
Yeah.
be really, really hard, and
Yeah.
it brings up a lot of our pain points, a lot of our insecurities. There's no point pretending that, you can be a positive Pollyanna 100% of the time, but it does get to a point where, if you find yourself in consistently in a very negative or bored headspace, or you tell yourself again and again it's not going to happen, or all men or women are shit, or whatever is going on, then it is time to look at mindset and make an active choice to move in the opposite direction.
Yes, yeah. And as you said, you can't control other people, but the only thing that you can control is your internal environment. And so something like mindset, and that's not to say, as you said, you don't have to always feel positive about a situation, but that doesn't mean that you can't still kind of retain your power to say, okay, why is this upsetting me? Or let me just hold myself in this moment where I feel unfairly treated or whatever. And that, for me, I feel is an opportunity to, you can either be the victim, or you can kind of take back your power, in that sense of just knowing that all I have control over is my internal world. So how can I help that right now, rather than trying to change or fix somebody else or interpret what somebody else, anything exterior to me, means about me? Just go inward and focus within.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really, really powerful tool to be able to have. And even
Yeah.
just asking yourself the question, and this is something I do quite a bit with clients, especially if we struggle to think about how we feel, what we need, what we like, all that stuff. It's just asking yourself the question, what do I need today?
Yeah.
You know, do I need the space to actually feel really shit and rage against dating? Okay, give yourself that.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
do I
So true.
need to actually get a pep talk from a friend because I need to be buoyed up now? I'm sick of feeling like this. Do I need a hug from somebody? Do I need to
Yes.
go on a run? Do I just need to get on with work actually and not focus on anything to do with
Yeah.
dating or emotions? Allowing yourself that space, whatever it is, I think is really,
Yes.
really important.
And even just asking yourself that question, how many people never even ask themselves, what do I need right now? What do I want right now? And even just doing that, for me, is such a beautiful act of self-love. And so if you can start to do that for yourself more, and again, that relates to dating as well, because I think a lot of the time, as you mentioned, we can be attracted to somebody just based on the fact that we think, oh, my parents will like this person, or my friends will think this person is hot, rather than truly asking ourselves, what do I think of this person? And am I really attracted to this person, or do I like the idea of them because of other people's narratives?
Yeah, yeah. It's a funny one, that, isn't it? Like, when you're dating, you can be so in something and so kind of wrapped up in it, you actually don't ask yourself the question, am I having a
Yeah,
good time?
Yeah.
And actually if like if
Yeah.
like maybe that one date is good and then like the other 10 days where you don't see them is awful, or and then like you get that like little like validation when they call you or you text you, then you're straight back to feeling rubbish. Like, yeah, like hang on a minute, am I having a okay time here? And often the answer is no, but we don't even stop to like zoom out a little bit and ask ourselves those fundamental questions. What do I need? And am I having a nice time?
It sounds so simple, but it is crazy how much of the time we just don't ask ourselves those things because we're so focused on what does the other person think about me rather than what do I think about them in this situation?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of like flipping, I feel like that needs to happen when it comes to dating.
Yes, yeah. And I also want to ask you about, because I know you mentioned you've been in this space for a while, and I feel like the dating scene, even in the last 5 years, has changed quite dramatically.
Mhm.
So, in what ways do you feel like dating has evolved, and also, how have you adapted your coaching to that as well?
One huge thing that springs to mind is the apps, to be honest. I think there's been a real shift in the last 2, 3 years of so much, not only dating burnout, but app burnout. I think when did like Tinder come about? I had a BlackBerry. So my friend was like, you've got to get an iPhone, so you've got to get this app. And I must have been at
Really?
uni. Yeah, I must have been at uni. So God, what like I probably came across it 14, 15 years ago, something like that. Um, and it was new, it was exciting, it was a great opportunity to connect with lots of different people. And don't get me wrong, loads of amazing relationships still happen from there. But I think there's been such a turn of people getting bored and feeling really disconnected with the swiping that now there's a sort of resurgence, isn't there, of meeting people in real life and having that human connection
Yeah.
again. And I think it was Bumble has recently, unfortunately, had to cut a lot of their workforce because the new generation aren't using apps in the same way and don't want to use apps in the same way. So people are spending less time on there, and they don't have as much of a hold, I'd say, anymore. So, like in real life dating events are becoming really popular again. And, that's why, like, have you Thursdays has taken off hugely. That's only open on the Thursday, all in real life events. Um, like board of dating apps, that's a new one as well. So, yeah, I really do recommend kind of rather than just relying on the app to use them as a tool and start to look at actually how can we meet people in real life. So I think that's changed quite a lot. It's changed how I work with clients too. Um, and also on to perhaps the second point, the an app field has become much more popular, which used to kind of be an app for kind of kinks and sexual freedom and things like that. But now actually people are using it more because they're finding people are much more open and honest about what they're
Yeah.
looking for, which is refreshing.
Yes.
So that's quite interesting too, and it really does show that there's a difference in how we want to be communicating and showing up. So that's probably been the biggest change, I'd say, when it comes to my coaching. Um, People have less tolerance. They're getting border. Getting border? Is that a word? Probably not. Getting more bored. I don't know. Yeah, there's less tolerance for bullshit, I think. But if I'm honest, the same things, the same principles have stayed the same. A lot of it is to do with self-esteem and figuring out what you want and learning to kind of love your life single and things like that too. So practicalities have changed quite a lot, but the
Yeah.
fundamentals are similar.
Beautiful. So, final question that I want to ask you is what piece of dating advice did you receive when you were single that completely changed your life?
Oh my God, there's two things that spring to mind. So one, I read in a book. Do you really think the universe has singled you out, you alone, to be single forever and never meet anyone? That was the first question. And when I read it, I was very much in that phase of like, I am going to be single forever. Everybody else is going to meet somebody and I'm not. And just like reading it, I was like, oh, okay, do I really think like me alone in the whole world has got like a black mark against my name and is never going to meet anybody? Truthfully, no, I didn't. No, okay, that's a ridiculous question, isn't it? But that was genuinely how I felt. So, challenging that thought and asking myself, do I really feel like this? Is it a bit ludicrous that I think I'm never, ever, ever going to be in a relationship for the next 70 years? That was a really important way to challenge myself. And then the second question I got asked, again, it's not dating advice, but I didn't, it was my friend said to me, have you ever just thought you've never dated anybody normal? And I was like, sorry? She was like, well, you go. She was like, you have all these stories and there's all these like, it's all these idiots you're dating. It's all this like drama. Have you ever just thought you've never dated anybody normal? Who's like nice and likes you and it's easy.
Why would I
And I
do
was like,
that?
yeah, why did I do that? And it was that light bulb. I was like, I know, okay, maybe I have just been always looking for the drama, always like, normal doesn't feel normal to me. Normal feels really boring. So again, it was that reflection and it was that advice. It's like maybe you should actually just like date somebody normal who likes you. So
Yeah,
simple, yeah,
yeah.
wasn't doing it. So those were two questions that were really important to me. Like,
Mm,
did I actually think that I was never going to meet anybody because I was so unlovable and I'd been singled out to be single forever? And also look at who you're dating, you know, look at the patterns you're repeating and who you're going for was the second reflective exercise I had to do. So,
So I was going to end on that question, but I actually just want to ask you one more then, just
yeah.
kind of related to that. So based on your own personal journey, um, so those were some big light bulb questions, but what would you say, because now, you're very happily married, you've just had your first baby together. So what were the key kind of lessons that you learned that you think made the shift between those single years of being attracted to similar sorts of men and things like that? What do you think were some kind of like key lessons that you learned that made the shift for you?
Um, Number one, if you're serious about wanting a relationship, you've actually got to get serious about doing something about it. You can't keep doing the same bullshit again and again. You've got to stop, you've got to listen, you've got to learn, and you've really got to commit to actually being in that relationship and that long-term goal. And unfortunately, that's not easy. As you said earlier, like instant gratification is very attractive. So waiting for the right person is hard. And, asking yourself the question, is this situation, is this person going to get me that goal, that vision? The answer is no. Walking away feels really, really difficult. So it's a commitment and it's a process and it can sometimes feel hard. So that's number one. You've got to be prepared to put in the work. So, otherwise you do just end up repeating the same thing again and again and again. Um,
Yes.
Second, a bit of advice I'd give is up your standards in a way where no, they don't get a medal because they text you good morning or they remember something you've said. I think the bar's pretty low at the moment. And I'd rather, my clients, my friends be single than be with somebody where they're miserable or feel mediocre or, you know, aren't happy.
Yes, yeah.
So that would be the second bit of advice. It may not feel, that it's going to get you more dates, but you'll be happier and people will step up. I have to say, that's something I really learned. Like when you have boundaries and when you have those amazing standards, people will either not meet them or they will step up.
Yes.
And
And either way,
yeah,
you win.
exactly. So
You've
yeah,
worked
I'd say
out. It's
those are
great.
kind of two. Yeah. But yeah, I'd say those are two key bits of advice. If you're serious about it, get serious and look at your standards and what you're allowing and what you're settling for.
Beautiful. Okay, so I do have three final quick-fire questions.
Okay.
And then I promise then we have finished the podcast. But so, quick-fire questions. Number one, what is the meaning of love to you?
Love to me means home. It's like coming home, it's safe, it's calm, it's free.
Beautiful. Oh, that's so beautiful. What do you wish you knew sooner about love?
That it will come. That it's out there.
And is there anyone, anything, any place, any people that you'd love to give love to right here on the podcast?
Yes, my very lovely client that I'm working with at the moment, and I won't name, but she is a very beautiful soul, and deserves all the love in the world.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And all my past clients. Like I get very attached, including you.
Yes. Well, thank you so, so much for coming onto the podcast with me. And you've shared so much amazing wisdom. So I know this is going to be very, very helpful for anyone that's listened to it. So thank you so much. And is there any final words you'd like to share with anyone listening?
No, just thank you so much for having me. And I get dating can be an absolute minefield and can feel really hard. So if anybody ever wants to come and have a chat, just let me know.
Yeah, how can people find you? Where can they find you online?
Do you know what? I'd normally say I'd hang out on Instagram, but I actually haven't been on there for a while because maternity leave. It was a bit of a boundary for me. So either through my website, I've currently got a one-to-one wait list, or drop me a message on Instagram because I will always check those.
And her handle is the Compatibility
Oh,
Coach.
sorry.
I'll do that anyway.
You can tell I've literally got several stuff, can't you? Yes, the Compatibility Coach, and my website is www.thecompatibilitycoach.co.uk.
Amazing.
Brilliant.
I'll tag it below anyway as well. Well, thank you so
you.
much.
Brilliant. Speak to you later. Bye.